You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of ZESTY Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
And so welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. We're going to talk about time today. Who feels like they don't have enough time to do what they want to do?
We've been there.
I know I do. I know I did. I remember telling one of the first coaches I worked with that I was always on borrowed time. I felt like I was doing the things and I was always squeezing them into something else. Like if I got, because I was building a business and had an infant, and if I did a post or something, it was like I was doing it in line, going to pick her up or whatever. So there was like, I didn't believe that I actually had the time to do the things I wanted to do. And felt I was always stealing from other times. So I've completely transformed my beliefs around time, which has definitely, splitting minutes. Yep. And I realized how much of it was about my beliefs because, we all have the same amount of time in the day. And there's some people who use it one way and there's some people who use it another way. So we wanted to talk about that today because I think it definitely relates to everyone.
For sure. Who here, let's see some hearts and somebody's hands, like who feels this? And then, kind of the next question really is, how long have you not had time? All right, seeing some hearts.
Yep, awesome. There's the hearts.
Here, yeah. And do you keep not having time? Is this like, yeah. I saw a meme the other day that was like, being adult is just saying, let me get through this busy week every week until you die. And I giggle a little bit because isn't that so true? We kind of have this conception of if I can get through this now, then I won't be busy anymore. But most of the time we are like kicking the can down the road, essentially. At least that's what it was like for me, for sure. So once I saw it, I was like, that's exactly what's happening.
Okay, so we just want to make sure you all know if you're in the right place, who we help. We have a mission, and our mission is to help women who have big dreams and maybe don't even know they have big dreams yet because they feel stuck and out of control with themselves and their lives. So it's the frazzled, the busy, the stressed out, the type A, the overworker, the stuck in your emotions day to day, and that is then affecting your confidence, and we want to help you shift that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you want to get to the point where you're really standing in the power of choosing what you want internally to be like, and therefore have a certain external world that you are then co-creating with, right? Where we don't get to determine everything, but we do get to participate in that. And many of us have gone, oh, I can't do anything. It's just not happening for me. And so we lose a little bit of the authority that we have over our life. And really, this is if you are ready to reclaim that and figure out a new paradigm, a new way of doing things. I just posted today on that in terms of if you don't have the results, it's time to change the strategy right? This is essentially what we're talking about, even when it comes to time. This is a brain-based approach. And so you're really going to want to hear how long things take, how you think about time, what's actually happening when you're waiting or waiting to have time and all of that. We are really going to transform the way that you are conceptualizing this, because when we keep being stuck, like what we were talking about, if you keep not having time and the same result keeps happening, even though you're moving the puzzle pieces, a lot of time this is a case where we have to look up, go to a different perspective. On the podcast yesterday, I was talking about perspective in terms of how do you be in the same place in life, but see things from a different vantage point. And the analogy is like you go to the Empire State Building, you're in the lobby, you're still in the Empire State Building. You go up to the top of it, you're still in the, someone calls you and asks where you are, you're going to say Empire State Building both times, but the view that you are going to get is very, very, very different. So this is a brain-based approach, looks very different. And that's the whole point, is that mucking around in the nitty gritty of something that's already not working, we know how frustrating that is. We totally get it. And that's why we're like, let's do things differently. And this isn't kind of off the wall, whatever. This is honoring and working with the central nervous system, where we are perceiving all of ourselves, our physical self, our emotional self, our mental self, and our spiritual self. When we bring that all in one cohesive place, when we move forward towards our dreams, towards how we want to feel, our health, our life, our dreams, that's where we feel really, really good living in congruency with that.
Yeah, who here was live with us yesterday? Thumbs up, hearts. If you were not here with us yesterday, it's posted in our story. Yesterday's live was all about the discomfort that derails us when it comes to transformation, what you might experience, feel, a sign that you think, oh, maybe I'm not on the right track. And it may also not mean that. So make sure to watch it, because it's going to tie. Okay, Megan was, yeah, we saw you here, Megan. Thanks for being here. It's going to tie into today's chat as well. Thank you for the hearts. We'd love, the overwhelm piece, and then time. I mean, these are the top two things we hear, even when people don't know that that's their thing, they'll say it's something else. They'll say like, oh, it's something else. And then as we go down in the layers, which is one of my specialties, is getting underneath it really, really quickly. What is the actual belief here? We get to the time one and the overwhelm. So today we want to talk about when you don't make time for yourself, or make yourself a priority. And, that's something that both of us did for a really long time. Like I used to say, oh, it's just a time thing. And when I started to look at it, it was actually the willingness of me making myself a priority. I just talked to a client all about this morning. And the more we talked, the more we realized is that her time was filled with checklist items that she had put there to keep herself busy, so that she would not have to do anything good for herself, because she believed she didn't deserve them, right? So we have to kind of look at this from a bigger perspective and kind of step back, slow down, and figure out what is actually happening here.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me give an example from my own life when it comes to, what's deeper underneath the time thing. So I actually would not have told you that I didn't have time, because actually at that point, when I was really sick, chronic pain, endometriosis, going through fertility treatments, all, just feeling miserable day in and day out. I wouldn't have necessarily said I didn't have time, because I was so good at doing what Megan was just talking about. It was like I lived in the checklist, and therefore I could say I did it, even stuff like, eating healthy, or like things that it was such a regimented checklist. So I'm like, someone said this is good, I can make myself do it, right? Except for it wasn't working, right? That this is where, if we're not getting results, it means the strategy is mismatched, right? That doesn't mean you have to take it completely apart, because sometimes we return to strategies from our past at different times. That's cool. And essentially I was trying to beat the drum of that strategy. And I was so stubborn that I didn't kind of see that that's exactly what I was doing. And so, tenacity is a good thing. And sometimes it kind of bites us in the butt if we don't realize it. But I kept not having the results that I wanted. I still felt really, really sick. And even though we were, doing things, I had a free blog and stuff like that, I wasn't able to actually participate the way that you see her now, because I just didn't really feel that good. And the lack of time thing, what I would have said is, this isn't going to work, right? Because I kept trying to do stuff and rearrange all the puzzle pieces on the outside and things weren't shifting. And therefore I would have been like, nothing works, which we're going to talk about that in a different live here, because that's a really, really big one. But part of what was underneath there was that I didn't want to invest time doing something that was potentially not going to work, right? I was like a little gun shy about investing the time because I didn't think that I would get better, right? So the time piece was still a factor, but I wouldn't have told you that. So that's why really we're going to get there. We're going to get to the end of that story, kind of what that looked like on the other side. But this is the kind of thing that happens that Megan's talking about, where you may say one thing and underneath it is another component that is playing into it. Most of us have multiple beliefs and things that have happened to us. The brain learns, right? So it's not that, oh no, I did something wrong. You had the experience, your brain made an interpretation of it, and it got hardwired in. We will explain more of that. So it's not your fault that happens, but we do, when we are like, I will stand in my own authority, part of that is taking responsibility for choosing differently as we move forward. Yeah, behind the scenes protection.
I love that, Kathy. Thank you. I just had this happen really recently, and Dr. Alex got to watch me go through it real time, where often the not having enough time for me, it became an excuse for why I didn't have certain things in my life. So luckily for where Dr. Alex and I are, health is something that we really have in a great place right now. So this can be about health. This can be about, building a business. This can be about coaching. This can be about relationships. You can apply anything we talk about to all the categories. So I kind of was watching this play out in a different area of my life, being that, I just didn't have time to do all those things, all those big things, like all those things that we say and I know I want to do in the world, like creating this full-on retreat center and just having amazing programs that reaches millions of women, right? All these things that are a true goal. And part of it is a little bit scary, right? And uncomfortable. I really had myself convinced that it was time was the only reason that I wasn't doing certain actions that would move toward that. I mean, I consciously would really believed it. and then my lovely husband retired from the military, which is awesome, right? Cool. He's going to be home. He's going to be, I've never had him around to like drive kids to school and help with grocery shopping, that kind of thing. He's retired and he's home in his 40s, right? Like, cool. And what I watched happen is I all of a sudden had time, like lots of time, because he was like, I am here to help you. I see your mission. I see your passion. I want to support you. I will do all the grocery shopping, do all the cooking, drive the kids to school. Like I actually had, for moms here who are used to like being the only one contacted about something, like my daughter was sick, and before I had even gotten off a client call, he had already gotten the message, picked her up, brought her home. And then I'm getting the message from the school like, oh no, someone's got to go get her. And he's like, she's already here. And it was crazy, right? This had just never happened. And I was watching all of a sudden all this time and my brain was still like, oh, wait, what is our excuse for not doing that scary thing or the uncomfortable thing, or, like the thing that doesn't actually take all that much effort, or it doesn't actually take all that much time, right? A lot of the times the thing that move us the furthest don't actually they take 5 minutes sometimes, and they're really uncomfortable, or you've perceived them that way. So it was just so fascinating to watch as all my reasons, right? We can either have results or we can have reasons. All my reasons were just crumbling. And then I had to really look at what it was. I had to really look at, what are the beliefs here? What are the fears here? What am I making this mean? Why is something that's uncomfortable, right? Like, go down all of that. And that was what truly unlocked my understanding of, like, okay, I am here, I am on a mission, and I can get over these beliefs and fears. The time thing was gone for me. So I'm curious if anybody's ever had that, any kind of thing happen where something you think is the reason you're not doing it falls away. Like having kids, and you're like, oh, I never have any time to myself. That's another one, is like, you just like literally don't, and you can't do anything. And then you're thinking that's the only reason you're not moving forward in something. And then I know for me, like, even mine are like 10 and 5 now, and they just don't require like the physical holding that they used to. They're obviously still around. And you realize, oh, that was a story that actually was not the reason why. Creative Thursday saying absolutely.
Yeah, and what's ironic is that a lot of times we won't make time for the deeper transformation, because to leap into a new paradigm, we talked yesterday, is inherently uncomfortable to the brain, and it will let you know that, right? Because it's wired for efficiency. If you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure you go back and watch that. And Megan and I, despite all of the stuff that was going on back when we were still, figuring things out for ourselves, is that we still made time to create everything that you see here now, like our podcast and all the blog posts that we have, and all the content here, and the highlights, and the Instagram lives, and all of it, right? Our TikTok channel, all of it, we made time for. And I was part of the time I was in residency working like 60 to 80 plus 100 hours a week. Megan had a newborn, right? We made time for that. And we also didn't make time to look what was underneath all the checklists and all of that stuff. So, part of it is really bringing all of yourself together, because think about what we were doing. We were essentially being like, we can impact out here and we'll run on the hamster wheel. And a lot of us do this. I have to change. Yeah, definitely. You're with it. We're going to talk you through the framework, so don't worry about it. But you're on the hamster wheel, but then over here, is the other part of you that you're ignoring and not acknowledging the desires there and the dreams that you have there. And the longer we keep ourselves separate like that, the pain of not being whole and in integrity with yourself also hurts. It hurts in a different way than being sick, like physical pain or whatever, right? Then that's a big thing that I realized. And so there's lots of different ways where this breaks out, right? Some people are like, I don't get to the physical stuff and I do some of this, or vice versa, what Megan and I were doing. It really comes down to then intentionality of the use of time. So we're going to dig into that even more. But essentially, one of the keys is, if you know that someone else is doing it, it's also possible for you. It may look different for you, but it's still possible. So that's kind of the number one thing to understand.
Yeah. So for people who think that they just don't have enough time to rewire their brain, and getting that cohesiveness in your life to move your dreams forward easily with intention, sustainability, we just say that's just not true. It's not about this huge amount of time. It's about what your priority and your focus is on, because we've experienced this. I know that, so in general, actually, like, you're going to have so much more time and energy when you get out of that cycle where you're like, well, I try and then I fail, and then I search some more, and then I try again, and then I go through the guilt of it not working, and then I try again. And this was something I experienced super firsthand with mold, and Alex too, with mold in my home, is that I got to a place, so we moved into a home, it had mold in it, keep that story short. And I knew I wanted to do something to support my body to get rid of it. And for those of you who've ever gone down the rabbit hole of different chronic diseases or mold or Lyme and all that, there's a million different possible ways you can support this. And everybody has the right way. And your brain's like, what the heck do I do? So I started getting into like trying and stopping partway in, and then researching, and then freaking out that I didn't have the whole picture, and like doing this whole thing. And meanwhile, this is me being a practitioner already practicing for 6 or 7 years. So I can only imagine someone doing this Google research on their own without that background and without Dr. Alex there with them, right? Like this was
yeah, just like all
yeah. So like that whole limbic system loop is a real deal thing. We're with you on that. And I realized at one point that I was actually going through multiple iterations of all the things to do in a loop without realizing that things that I already knew. So Dr. Alex said to me, hey, Megan, like, you will know that there is no one way to do things like this. Like, what's more detrimental right now is the fact that you are doubting and guilting and shaming and doing this exhaustive research thing. Like, how about
changing what you're doing every 2 days
and then changing it so that I'm not getting a follow through. And so in the process, realized what was happening, was able to just say, okay, I've interviewed, on the podcast, I interviewed like the best people. Like, I'm just going to stick to this one plan, follow through the protocol, whatever. So I end up doing the same protocol I was already doing. I didn't actually change what I was physically doing, but things inside changed very quickly. I actually had a reminder on my phone, like, let it go, stop the research. I was just like, I'm just going to do the thing. And that was when all my symptoms went away and I was able to finally detox. So we see this happen with people who join our Health Transformation Accelerator. They come in on a protocol. They're already doing, like, we end up working with women who've already done a lot of research. They've done amazing functional lab work. Like, these aren't this like, oh, I'm just trying something for the first time necessarily. And they were able to stick with that same protocol and get the results by rewiring the brain to say, this is now going to work, and I can accept the support you're giving me instead of going through this loop. So that did not change the amount of time, that protocol, and what I did, but holy cow, did it free up a lot of time, right? Like, it was still the same protocol of getting in the sauna for the 20 minutes, right? But it freed up all that research I was doing, all that crying I was doing, all that second guessing I was doing. Like, the back and forth is the time sucking, exhausting part from what we see of a process like this. It's usually not the actual, here's the plan of what you're going to do to optimize your hormones or your brain health or your detox, that kind of thing. It's the questioning.
Yes. 100%. Holy cow. And that was such a big aha moment for us, where we were like, we really looked at the time it takes to do things. And you're absolutely right, to take supplements or pee on some strips for a test is like virtually nothing. So that's a really good insight. So I'm actually going to explain, the brain wiring portion of that in a minute. So make sure you stick around for that right now. But first I want to go into another aspect of this with the time suck of what Megan is talking about. I think a lot of times what people experience is that we have been conditioned to not be our own authority. I mean, think about from the second you were a kid, the kind of stuff that you were told and picked up, right? It's sit down, line up in twos, hold your buddy's hands, don't run in the hallway. This is how you take tests. This is how you sit at the table. And then we went more and more and more, right? And depending on how we got conditioned, many of us who have big dreams have had them for a long time. So we have jobs that we worked for, school that we went to, trainings that we got, certifications that we spent time on. that's all super awesome, right? That strategy got us there. And at some point, a lot of the strategies that helped us cope with things and get through things in the past, as we want to transform our lives and experience a new way of being, we have to sort of unsticky ourselves from that strategy and see what else is out there. And we're also very passionate about, I've said this twice now, just because you had a strategy doesn't mean you have to burn the whole thing down. You can. And Megan and I still use the work ethics that we developed earlier on that didn't go away for us, but it's a different way of interacting. So with the authority stuff, as we get into adulthood and we're dealing with health issues or just not meeting our goals, many of us are like, well, what did I do in the past? I went and I read books, I learned things, right? All of the, oh my gosh, real life lessons. I love that handle. A lot of us are looking for external people to listen to and tell us what to do. In fact, that's one of the most common things that people come to us with. They're like, great, Megan and Alex, please tell me everything I need to do. If you would just give me a checklist, I will do it. Right? Who's been there where you just want someone to be like, screw it, just tell me what to do. Suck it up culture can really be detrimental to listening to us. Absolutely. And then we go to the authority, and what happens? You get the labs, oh, your labs are normal. You must be fine. And you're like, oh, but I have the symptoms still. Or, hey, I want to lose weight. I'm having a hard time. And the person you go to as the authority is like, have you heard this thing about eating less and working out more? Maybe you should do that harder, right? We keep doing it. So as we take on then authority figures, and we love learning. We're in groups, we have coaches, we have groups of women that we participate in that are peers. Having that stuff's really important. And it's a different way of being when you can pick up new information and look at it and ask, is this right for me right now? Or how can I tweak it so that it is a very different experience that oftentimes is not the thought process we go to, right? Someone says, hey, you have PCOS, you should do intermittent fasting. And we're like, okay, right? And potentially, meanwhile, our brains are sitting there going, oh, well, we're undernourished, we're doing a whole bunch, the system's really stressed out, we're in fight or flight constantly, and now here comes less nutrition, less food, right? What is a system like that going to do? It's going to go, okay, we are continuing to be in survival mode. What does survival mode do to the hypothalamus? Well, the hypothalamus makes decisions on how we make hormones. The two, if that's where you are, you're going to keep fighting yourself. And so that shame and guilt and failing and trying spiral is on something where you are trying to fit into a box from someone else, an outside authority, and apply it to yourself. That's why in Health Transformation Accelerator, when you see down there in the link, it's a framework. It's not, here's the things you do, because it's about us teaching you to empower yourself to make decisions when you understand all the moving parts. Of course, there's some trial and error to that process, but the reason that we do it that way is that you lose time trying to do things that are mismatched to you. And even more importantly, as we start to unify all of ourselves, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, we realize that trying to fit into someone else's box means we pit our own values and our needs against our goals, right? Because if someone's like, hey, for this health condition, you need to cook more, and you are cooking in the kitchen 3 meals a day, and your family's out having fun in the other room, and your need is for connection and love, how long are you going to cook there for? Because most of us at some point are like, I want the love, right? I want the connection. And because of that, we need to have a framework that is flexible enough for all of us to do the things that we need that meet our highest values and our needs, and also gets us to our goals, right? It's the wholeness of you getting there that feels really, really good. What happens then is as you begin to honor that, you go faster and faster, because everything you do then, you make up the time of listening to the outer authority and forcing things to happen. And what you do is begin to create your own roadmap to get yourself places. Now, all of a sudden, you can go a lot faster towards your goals. Does that make sense to everyone? Like, do you see how you would make up a whole bunch of time when you look at things that way? And even learning to be your own authority is a process. This isn't where we don't just wake up one day from like 30 plus, 20 plus, 40 plus, 50 plus years of conditioning of living one way and be like, nope, today I'm not going to listen to anyone. I totally trust my intuition. It's like creating any other relationship where you build trust, right? You get better at it as you do it, but that really is the answer to a time crunch more than anything else.
And I'm wondering here, like, who here has gotten really good like advice, or somebody has told them something that was really awesome and you just couldn't hear it where you were, right? Like you just wouldn't go in. I was talking to a friend this morning who was in a really rough place, just feeling super down and having lots of anxious thoughts. And she was explaining how another friend had told her this advice. It would sound really, really great of just like, be in the present moment, like all that stuff is in the past. And like, basically there's no reason. And when you're in that state and someone tells you that, you just want to flip them off, right? Like you're like, you just telling me like, don't worry about it, right? So even the best, and these are things that I love, these are all of our mentors say these things too. And sometimes you can't hear them. If your body is in fight or flight, you cannot hear this. You cannot, and not only can you not hear this, you can't take it in, and it actually makes you feel like it's your fault and you're doing a bad job. And we make a very conscious effort inside of our programs to make sure people feel heard where they are. And we're going to offer support, coaching, some solutions, some guidance. And we want you to know that where you are is where you are. And that's cool. Sometimes you're just in a place where you're like, things suck and I want to tell you about it. Awesome. Right? Like you just find it's so disempowering when you feel like someone just takes your whole thing that you feel is going on and just says, it's just be in the now,
Totally. And that's where then it helps to look at everything about you as fair game to utilize to your advantage, right? When Megan and I are really in a down place and everything seems bad, we also don't go to each other and it's like, you should buck up, right? Or, hey, you should do this. But sometimes I'll be crying about something and really upset. And Megan's like, why don't you tap or, do the chest thump while you tell me about it, right? And I don't even have to, I'm not trying to think more positively. I'm honoring where I am. And now when you say I'm having an emotional response and I have thoughts that go with that, I can still work with my physical body to help calm down that response. All of a sudden, new thoughts are available to me, right? So a lot of times we just see people are cherry picking one portion of themselves to do it. But at each part, it's like for the physical body, I went to medical school, I did residency, I did fellowship, I trained at the University of Chicago. There's a lot of things I learned about the physical body from really great programs and places you would want to train at. And at some point you go so far to the physical body that you loop back around to realizing that's never going to be a whole person's experience, right? And even in medicine, you talk to doctors that have been practicing for a while, they will say, I've practiced long enough in medicine to know I don't really know anything, right? That you really get to the point where you exhaust that box that we have created, that if we could explain physical body as all of us, then that would work. But the reason you run out of that is that we are multidimensional and we are multifaceted in who we are, right? And so at each point, you can only go so far before you realize that can't be the full story, right? And it's the same for the perception of time and what we choose to do. This is a really big determinant of that. So I promised that we'd loop back around to the brain. Basically, the most important thing with time that we can realize when it comes to the brain is the dynamic and constantly rewiring nature of our central nervous system. It is an organ system just like anything else that adapts to what is happening to us and what internally and externally, right? It is always in motion. The same way your skin can look like your skin all the time, but really we know that it constantly turns over, right? You lose skin cells and you grow new ones. The brain is called neuroplasticity. It changes to what we're doing. And there's lots of studies that have been done where we look at meditation, hypnosis, mental visualization, right, for athletes or presidents, CEOs of companies. All of those people use that research and do the kind of stuff that Megan and I do inside Health Transformation Accelerator, because science, using science, looking at people's brain scans before and after things like this, it changes. That's totally fine, right? Or people lose a certain sense, and there's ways that the central nervous system will compensate for that. And you've heard that there's a good documentary called The Brain That Changes Itself. It's just on YouTube. It's like an hour and 5 minutes or something. It's not that long, but it talks about things like that and just how dynamic that process is. This is really cool. This means that we get to direct, once we understand how that process happens, then we get to direct it and go tweak it to a way that supports us being the kind of people we want to be, doing the kind of things we want to be doing, and feeling good getting there, right? That's cool. The flip side when it comes to time is that it's happening anyways, all the time. So even if we are like, I don't have time to do this health thing differently. I don't have time for any of this. I really don't have time to rewire my brain. I'll just wait, right? I'll do it later. I'll do it then. Unfortunately, the dynamic part of the brain just means that we are wiring in further what we are already doing, because the brain is wired for efficiency in that way, right? There's really two things: survival, that's what it has an opinion on. Efficiency, it doesn't. So that's why you get efficient at even things that you don't want to be doing. And so as we don't choose to take the time to guide that and learn how to navigate that process, we're not actually opting out of not wiring in the stuff we already have going on that we feel isn't working. And so does that make sense for anyone who's on here, that this is not stoppable as a thing, right? I like the gravity analogy with this, where you could say, I don't have time for gravity, and you could totally do that. And if you jump off something, you're most likely, unless you talk to us if you haven't had this, but if you jump off something, you're going to hit the ground. So it's just when we say, I don't have time to change this, it is under and sorry, now that you hear this, you can't unhear it, right? So learning is, but once you realize that, it means that if we don't choose it at the time, we are consciously opting into that. Now, is there a time and a place for that? Yes, because there have been times where Megan and I are like, you know what, we're going to let this ride. But those times are very few and far between, because we realize that if we're going to sit around and be like, why don't I have this? I really want it. Why isn't this working? That then, us saying things like, I just don't have time for that, or I'm not going to give myself time, or what if I take the time and it doesn't work? Then we're really saying, not attempting it, not taking the time. We're just going to keep perpetuating it, which means that the complaining bit, like if you have, like your mom, like, she'll hear you out, but in the grand scheme of things, you always kind of know internally that you opting into that and saying, this is what I accept to wire in at the moment. Okay. So that when it comes to time in the brain, there's no pause button for that.
And this is usually a sign you're sending yourself that I'm prioritizing staying comfortable or staying exactly where I am over my dreams or over my health or over my abundance, whatever it is that you're outwardly saying you want, and then actually look at where you spend your time and your money. That's how you know what your actual priorities are.
Totally. And actually, I had this with chronic pain because, and I realized this was kind of underneath me saying stuff like this. And again, unless you are willing to lift up the rug where you swept things under, you don't really find stuff like this. But what I realized was that part of me really wanted to prove that my pain was real. And it's ironic because the doctors that had dismissed me told me I was fine, told me there was nothing wrong with me. And then, oh, oops, you're going into menopause, right? Kind of salty about that. And because of that, I said, oh no, my pain's real, right? And I just kept doubling down on like, I need to be right. The ironic thing about that is that they had probably forgotten about me like 2 seconds after I walked out the door. And I was years later, like 12 years later, still being like, I want to prove that my pain is real, when really I was saying, I want the pain gone. Right. So it's things like this that, it's a little bit of a doozy to admit, but this is the kind of thing that it actually doesn't take any time to get to that realization. That's a split moment, and you see it for what it is. And that's the thing that allowed me to get unstuck. Because once I was like, why would I prove this? They don't even care.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to win that one. They haven't even thought about me in years. I don't know why I'm sticking with that. And all of a sudden things shifted. I would have lost a lot of time without that kind of thing.
I had a really good example of even convincing myself that I didn't have time for something. There was a call, there was a group that was offering, and there was a live call, and it was at 3:00, once a week, and 3:30 is when my kids get picked up. And at the time I was in charge of pickup, and I was like, oh, I can't do that. That's not right during kid pickup, right? I can't do that. I don't have the time. I can't do that then. And I meant that. And I didn't sign up for the thing. And I swear, not even 2 days later, there was another opportunity that came up. And this opportunity was actually 3 days in a row, 3 12-hour days, right? So I was going to miss drop off and pick up 3 12-hour days in a row. So what is that? 36 hours. And it was something I really wanted to do. And I magically not only covered the drop off, the pickup, but 36 hours worth, right? Like, so it showed me so clearly I did not have time for an hour a week call. I did have time for 36 hours in a row, right? And that's where you can see priority versus not, your belief in the results you'll get versus not. And it's just very clear in that kind of situation. Like, this is not a time thing. Although I was convinced it was, like, I was even convinced. So we hear you when you say that. But yeah. I know we're going to get cut off by Instagram here not too long. So shall we let everybody know what's going on?
Absolutely. We got an amazing bonus for you. So yes, go ahead, Meg.
Yeah. So for those of you who are wanting to shift your health, your life, your any goal, really, we've used this process. We have 7 steps inside of our health transformation accelerator that we have used to shift Alex's pain, my mold story, my anxious thoughts. I've used it to get a lake house, anything that you can want. This process we use over and over and over again. We fine-tuned it over the years, all of the pitfalls we fell into. We're going to be teaching it over 12 weeks in a group online program called our Health Transformation Accelerator. We are open to join today, and then just 2 more days it'll be open after this. So you will have to make your decision about whether you want things in your physical reality to change or not. Are you happy with things the way they are? Are you doing the runaround of like listening to a bunch of random people and buying a bunch of random supplements and not committing, saying you don't have the time for yourself, saying that you don't have the money, you're not worthy of it? We are asking you to reframe and rewire your brain in the moment. So one cool thing we always do with women we work with is we give them a tasking. So we'll say, oh, you just had this aha moment. What is a task you can do now to go secure in that new neurology? So sometimes when you realize, oh, I've been putting myself last, you can go do something, go put yourself first. You can go ahead and join a program, even just clicking pay, I'm doing this. That is telling your brain, I am investing in myself. I believe in myself. I believe things can change. I believe things can be better. And in that moment, things will shift. We'd have people have huge shift before a program even starts because they said to their brain, I'm doing this and I deserve this. And it's super powerful to watch. So for anybody who joins by the end of today and yesterday, all of you are already looped into this. We will be having a raffle for a Quantum Leap VIP session with me, which is a very cool process that I use to get rid of limiting decisions and negative emotions. So we'll find that underneath any inability to change, or underneath the physical things that are there that you don't want, or the physical things that aren't there yet that you do want, are most likely some kind of decision you made at some point. We call it a limiting decision versus belief, because it's when did you decide to believe that? The cool thing about that is if you decided at some point to believe it, then you can decide something else. Whereas a belief kind of feel like that's just my belief, and this is actually a decision. So we can clear those. I've had amazing transformations with these clearings for physical things, because not often, I say all health things come with emotions and beliefs tied to them. This can be yours. This can be ancestral. This can go way back. And cool things happen where people go back and experience something that their ancestors experienced that's stored in their cells, stored in their body, and clearing that, they are no longer carrying that burden. They can shift what they believe in their brain chemistry. So this is a super bonus session, Quantum Leap with me. If anybody has any questions about that, please reach out to us. If you're here live and have questions about how that works or how Health Transformation Accelerator works, we have expanded it. Eve, it's pretty awesome. We've expanded it to be 12 weeks, and we've added some extra experts. We're adding human design. So Barbara is an amazing human design expert, is going to come in and help us understand how we make decisions by our design. Lots of us are like following somebody's plan and then realizing, oh, that's not actually how I work. And that's why it's not working, right? Like, it works for these people, and maybe these people are men and you're a female. Maybe these people are a different type of how you learn and how maybe it's more your gut feeling of how you get there. A lot of us know deep down what it is. And if it's not quite accepted in our family or friends, then we go against this and are not using these tools we have. So we help you get back to that knowing that you already have. And then you just have a toolkit. You have the 7 steps that you can use at any time for anything, and you just pull them out and you go through it. For those of you, I know a lot of you here were on our habit hack challenge last week. We kind of went through a snapshot of the 7 steps. And we have people just from that week being like, I came in here because I wanted to just start walking more or eat less sugar. And now I'm realizing exactly what was underneath that. It has nothing to do with that. And it's a different way of shifting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So actually, Meg, can you go through the 7 steps?
Yeah.
You have them?
I'm probably going to mess up the order.
Actually, I have them. So, all right. So 7 steps inside Health Transformation Accelerator program. This is when you have a framework, you will hear the difference between why we do not tell you exactly what to do, but how the framework helps cover all of the areas of you where you can find congruency, right? So number 1 is get into state. Get into state because the state of the body and the central nervous system determines availability for learning and healing, right? If we are in survival mode, our brains are not focused on healing, and they're not focused on learning and wiring in new information. That's why changing your habits, when you're like, oh no, I'm unhealthy, like I gotta eat this way, let me go get the food, let me cook it, let me clean it, blah blah blah. It's not as attainable as a habit because the brain's not available for that kind of activity. It's not there. That's why a lot of people are like, oh, let me work on my beliefs or think positively. But when you're super ramped up, you're going against what your body thinks, right? So that's getting into state. Then for step number 2, you need to know where you're going. So like a GPS, you know where you are, then where you're going, and communicate that goal to your brain in a way that understands. And this is where people write out their goals and their New Year's resolutions, and that doesn't necessarily stick, right? Because the brain is not looped into this process. Number 3 is brain chemistry, because many of us have imbalanced brain messengers inside the system, right? If we're always in fight or flight and stressed out and a lot of the things that happen normally, sick, whatever, the brain is going to change what chemicals it is producing and the amounts that it's producing. That's why not fighting that makes things so much easier, right? And so in the program, there's optional testing. You can know exactly what yours are, get a personalized protocol, or there are ways to support the brain with building blocks and overall health of the system, depending on if you're available for testing or not, right? All of this ends up being customized because Megan and I are never going to stress people out. That's step number 1. So everything is geared for that, right? So that's 1, 2, and 3. Number 4 is you have to uninstall and begin to bring into the light the old stories, the old beliefs, the old limiting decisions that underlie it, right? Because it's things like, I always mess everything up. Or, for weight loss, people are like, yeah, I want to lose weight. And then they're like, my whole family's overweight. We've all been like this. We're all like that. That's just how it is. And you can see how the two things, it's not going to let you go to the place that you want to be. Because now you're not the same as your family. Your brain doesn't like that so much, right? Why is it going to get you to lose the weight? Number 5 is install the new beliefs. There are ways to wire in ideas faster. Who here has done affirmations before and you're like, I could do these till the cows come home and I still am not buying them? Yeah, change the story. Exactly. Right. And that's why this is approaching everything from a brain-based approach. Like, how does the brain actually work to do this? Once you can know the steps, but the other part of this is really understanding how to work with it so that it's efficient. You make up time doing that. Number 6 is the real world action. That's where most people jump in without doing any of the other 5 steps before it. And number 7 is going through the up-leveling process. What happens when we change and then we look around and are like, this world and aspects of it, some of it are no longer going to fit. And sometimes there's the discomfort of being a new you in your world. And part of that is navigating. And the most common thing we see is that people quit like 2 inches from the finish line. They get there, they get really uncomfortable, and then they're like, I'm going to cut and run. And we did that ourselves, and all of it, that one really hurts because you've actually done all the work and you're almost there. It's just a matter of navigating that last step. And then you're back, once you have that and you're living it, that's where the next goal comes in. That's why people can do Health Transformation Accelerator program for multiple rounds, continuing to up-level their lives. And we have women who are going through it again now, right? So those are the 7 steps. As you probably haven't heard, a system like that. And that's where we're talking about, we're honoring a new paradigm, because we got really sick of navigating the old one that only worked for a small percentage of people.
I'm trying to remember what one of our habit challenge members said. She said it was like, this was like fairy dust, like having the stuff. Do you remember? She's like, having these steps was like having fairy dust sprinkled on everything I already knew, but it pulled it together for her. Like, oh, there were some missing steps and there was an order. And now there's a way to do it. Oh, another thing someone says is that this is like math and orders of operations, right? Like you may do a math problem, but if you don't follow the order of operations, you'll get an answer, you'll get a number, and it won't be the correct number. So there is a reason that we have the steps in the order of operations in the way that we go, because you want the answer that you want, right? You don't want to be putting the things in different order and realizing that you're doing, right? You're checking off your list, you're doing the 7 steps, but you're doing them backwards, and then the results are not happening. So we would like to help you navigate that. We would love, love, love to work with you. We have such a fabulous group of HTA family group members who are sticking around and doing this again, and new members. So thank you for all of you who've already joined. And you have today, if you want to win the session, the Quantum Leap Transformation one-on-one session with me, please join today. And then you have till Thursday otherwise.
Awesome. Yeah. So next up, what we're going to talk about tomorrow is, what if you've not healed or failed on your goals for so long that you think that it's never going to happen, or you suspect it's not. A lot of times we play the game where it's like, no, I don't really believe that, but then I'm going to go do a bunch of research. I'm not really going to do it, right? So all of that, whatever comes up for you in terms of, I've been too sick, I've had this for too long, I'm stuck with this now, no one else has gotten better. If I believed what the reproductive endocrinologist told me, that I was going to go into menopause and that I was stuck with that, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you. So this is really, no matter what you're coming with, come on over tomorrow, because we've really lived this stuff, and there's a lot of ways to work with your brain to begin to have a different experience of that. We don't go back and I can't, that conversation happened to me. Yeah. And I didn't want that to be my reality. Therefore, I made choices that supported that not being my reality. So we're going to talk all about that tomorrow.
Same time, same place. So 10:30 Pacific, 1:30 Eastern tomorrow for our next topic. And we're excited to be working with all of you that are joining in our HTA. This
HTA crew.
Lovely. Thanks for the hearts, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and we're exactly at 1 hour, so it's going to knock us off any second.
Okay, bye, guys.
Have a great day.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare, and we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads, and we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.